Hi, Matt with eTrailer. Today we're going to be talking about the Thule TracOne ladder rack on the back for a 2025 Ford Maverick. So let's check it out. So you already know that the Maverick has a relatively smaller bed, so if you want to get the most out of it, I think a ladder rack is going to be the way to go, because you'll be able to put those extra long items back here. So if you have anything like lumber for work, you can put it up here, or if you want to use it for more recreational things, you can put kayaks and canoes and still have plenty of space to store them. And if you have any experience with this ladder rack, let us know how you're using it and how you like it in either a comment or review below. But today I'm mainly going to be focusing on a couple main features about this ladder rack that stand out to me. I'll talk about how it's going to interact with the Maverick, and then finally I'll actually install it on the Maverick. So with this rack, what really stands out to me is it's going to be one of the nicest finishes we have for a ladder rack. There's not going to be a lot to it. It's just going to look more OEM, since we're going to have a very similar finish to our bed rails as to the ladder rack itself. This is a pretty seamless design. Another thing that I really like is how it's interacting with the vehicle. We're not blocking anything like our back window or above our antenna. A lot of shorter ladder racks will actually be lined up with the antenna and get in the way. And we won't have to make any modifications to our bed. And speaking of that, let's actually talk about how it's attaching to the bed right now. And taking a closer look at that foot here, you can see how it's attaching. It's just applying pressure to our bed rails. And we have these clamps. It's just going to have a bolt that runs up underneath, and it has this little foot at the very end of it that keeps it secure. If you have anything like this track we have right here, it's still not going to impede it. Now you will lose some use. You won't be able to get that past here, but you can actually still get the clamps in place. And this crossbar will be sitting on top of these towers, and these towers are a very clean design. There's not a lot happening with them. They're not very distracting. Up top though, we're going to have this T-channel. This T-channel will let you use any T-channel accessories here, so you can mount them that way. If you don't have any T-channel accessories, you can just strap your items down and use these load stops to help you out. The way these load stops are going to work is they'll just slide up and down that channel. You can tighten it down with just a hand knob, and this will even work with any rope, or straps. You can use this hook here or this hole in the center to use that as a tie-off point. And as far as what your crossbar spread is, because that will be important depending on what type of gear or items you have up here. You can actually adjust this to fit your needs. This is probably as wide as you're most likely going to get. You might be able to get an inch or two wider than that, but you can definitely bring these in a little bit closer if need be. But I think in most cases, I think this is going to be a good distance here. Now let me actually give you that spread here real quick. That's going to be 38 inches, so that's definitely good to know if that's going to work with your gear. Next up, let's actually talk about some other measurements. The first measurement I want to get is going to be the clearance underneath the crossbars themselves. That's going to be about 45 inches. The next one I want to get is going to be that load stop up top. That's going to be roughly 52 inches. Both of those are good to know because let's say you have some taller items that are going to reside in the bed of your truck. You want to make sure they're going to have clearance and not make contact with those crossbars, that they'll actually fit. The height, the total height, that's important to know because if you're going through any low clearance areas like a garage, you want to make sure this is still going to fit and not make contact with anything. And I just wanted to point out again, this antenna is going to be relatively tall, but this is still going to be above there. Now, if you have anything that's going to bow, like some shorter lumber, that might make contact. And if that's the case, I'd recommend just taking your load stops, pushing it over, so it's not going to make contact with that. And really the last thing you're going to need to know about how this is going to interact with the Maverick is going to be that weight capacity. So this is going to be rated for 600 pounds, so you can put quite a bit up there. Now, if you're also loading the bed itself with some pretty heavy item, let's say you got some concrete or mulch back there, that's going to pick up some weight quick. So if that's the case, I just recommend checking out what your vehicle is rated for and then go from the lowest rated component so you don't damage anything. And when it comes to the installation of this is going to be relatively pretty easy to do. The biggest part is just making sure you get everything in the right orientation, and we'll talk you through the best way of doing that. So if you want to see that installation process, just stay tuned. Now to begin the installation, we want to lay out all our parts. Now I already have the front ones installed. It's going to be the same process. Now your towers will be in some certain orientations. I'll go over that in a little bit once I get to that point. But let me just show you what we have at the moment. So we're going to have our crossbar, and we're going to have these rubber pads for the feet of the towers. Next to that, we're going to have the clamps and the little feet that go with them. And then we're going to have our load stops. There's going to be 2 of them. And of course, we're going to have the 2 legs or towers that come with our kit. Now what we want to do at this point is just make sure if you have anything in your bed that is not going to get in our way. So right now, we do have this little track here. So if you do have this trim package, this is definitely going to be something you want to think about. So what we want to do is move these to a point that won't get in our way. So let me just adjust this one at the moment, because I want this to be more at the center of my vehicle. I can just turn that a bit and put it maybe here. You can put this in 1 or 2 locations. You can keep it here in the center, or you could put it at the very front of your vehicle. Whatever is not going to be in the way of these clamps here, because you can tell they sit really close to that track system. I am going to recommend a few tools for you to use. So I'm going to recommend a tape measure just so you can get everything squared off. And I'm going to recommend some bits. You could use some Allen keys too, but these are just going to be a little bit easier if you have a ratcheting wrench with you. Now we're going to have this one here. This is going to be your 7/32, and then we're going to have a 3/16. I'm just going to use that 3/16 now. What I'm going to do with this is remove the end caps of our crossbars, because this is going to allow me to get this all set up to put my towers and my load stops on. And actually, you just need to remove one of these because you're going to have one continuous track that goes across, and that's going to allow you to just put both towers and load stops on here. Now earlier I talked about these having their exact locations. The way you can tell that is just make sure the logo's always facing the outside. And for the ones near to your tailgate, you want to make sure that beam is in this orientation. And that we also have this bend here. This is going to be the part that's up against your bed rails. You see what I'm talking about a little bit more when I have this fully installed. So I'm just going to put this first one into place. You're just going to have this little block on this bolt, and it'll go through that channel and push all the way to the other side. And just maintain control of that crossbar and do the same thing with the other tower. And what I would recommend now is just to tighten down these bolts just a tad bit. We just want it enough where it's not going to slide all over the place when we're moving it later on. But this isn't probably going to be the spot where it's going to be living at the moment. We'll probably have to make some adjustments later on. So I don't want to tighten it down completely. Just to have a little bit of resistance with it. I'm going to do that on both sides. And from here, I'm just going to lift up on this and flip it around. And it looks like we're close. We're not perfect quite yet for a fit. So what I'm going to do is just hold one side, put a little bit of pressure on there. We still have enough resistance where it's going to stay in place, but it's not going to slide on us. Same thing on this side too. And if you tightened it a little bit too much, you can just come back through, loosen those bolts a little bit, and adjust it as needed. Once you have this in a relatively good spot, you want to make sure this is pretty close to being flush, and then we can measure everything out to make sure it's square. The way we're going to do that is we're going to find a point on our bed that's going to be the same on either side. So I'll just use the end of our bed here. That's pretty close to 8 inches. I might just push mine in a little bit just to make that a bit easier for me. I'll check the other side and make sure it's the same. Now, when you're on the front side, there's actually a little notch cut out on your bed. That's what I used last time. It was really easy to use that as a reference point. Just a big thing to take away there is just making sure it's the same on each side. And let's grab these rubber pads. This is going to go right underneath this foot here. So I'm just going to lift up on that. Try not to move it too much since we already had our measurement. And stick it underneath there. And honestly, it's not a bad idea. If you're not super confident with that movement, sometimes it will kind of get a little squirrely on you. Just get that measurement a second time. And there, it kind of moved a little bit on me, so I'm just going to adjust it some until I have it where I want it to be again. And just make sure you do that on the other side. And we can move over to those clamps now. And as far as clamps go, these are actually really easy to use. You're just going to make sure that you loosen that bolt down just to where there's enough of just a little bit of the knob sticking out at the very end of it. Then we'll grab this cap, this little foot, and it's going to have a cutout inside of it that this will sit right on top of. Then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to that notch. And I put this in place, starting out from going underneath and then putting it up on top and sliding it down. I try to make sure mine is as close as possible to one end. And then afterwards, I'll check underneath my bed to make sure I don't have anything obstructing my path. Right now I got a little tab, so I'm just going to shift this over some until it fits good here. Now I'll just hand tighten this until I have some resistance. And once I'm ready to put on the second one, I want to make sure that there's enough of a distance there that they're not too close. Because in the instructions, there's going to be a specified number. That's going to be the minimum distance that these two can have between them. So just make sure you double check that distance and don't put them too close together. And we're going to do the same thing on either side. And from here, we're going to grab our 7/32 Allen key or socket and bit. And we're going to tighten these down the rest of the way. And once both sides are tightened down completely, repeat that on your driver's side. And then we're going to grab our load stop. We'll come up to the side where we removed that end cap. And I want to make sure I put the first one with that little knob facing inwards. Slide that into place until it reaches the other side. And then I'm going to put my second load stop up here, and then we can adjust how this crossbar is sitting up here. Now we want to adjust this crossbar to be in the right spot. The way we're going to do that is by moving it left or right. But first, take your measurement to see how it's sitting on there. Make sure it's the same distance on either side. If it's not, what we're going to do is apply pressure from one side and push it inwards. Now, a lot of times you're going to find a lot of pressure and tension there, and that's going to be because typically these towers are going to bind up some. What you're going to do in that situation is you're just going to try to push these out, and you're going to try to alleviate some of that tension there. You might have to loosen up these bolts too. And if you're still having issues, try to grab a friend, and they can try to alleviate some of that tension by pulling on one of those towers for you as you shift it over. When it's in a good spot, then you can come back through with that 7/32 Allen key and tighten it down the rest of the way. And we're going to do that for the rest of the bolts underneath here too. Finally, we'll just move right back over here, put that end cap back on, line it up, grab that bolt that comes with it. Sometimes it's going to be a little bit tricky to start the hand thread. If you do have some issues with that, instead, you can just put it on your Allen key and start it that way. But now I'm going to switch over to my 3/16 bit and tighten it down completely. And from there, just give it a good shake test. Make sure it feels solid. And if it does, you can load it up with whatever your gear you have and take it out for a ride, and then adjust your load stops to be wherever it's going to be the best fit for you. But that'll do it for our look at the installation and some of the features of the Thule TracOne ladder rack on the back of our 2025 Ford Maverick. I'm Matt. Thanks for watching.